Part 71. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Ning. Chapter 701. Chapter 701 Paternity Test. Sure enough, as Xia Moyan expected, the operation was a near miss. The two people, one large and one small, were pushed out of the operating room and into the special care ward. Xiaoling went in to keep them company. Both of them were asleep, and the ward was very quiet. She went to see Xiao Hui first. The little child looked pale and was as weak as a serious illness. Fortunately, his breathing was still stable, which made her feel relieved. She stretched out her hand and gently stroked Xiao Hui's cheek. This child had a terrible fate. He was separated from his family at such a young age. Not long after he was adopted by her, something like this happened again. She felt very sad, feeling that she had harmed the child because of her stubbornness. Sighed lowly and looked at Li Lei again. Li Lei's eyes were also tightly closed, and the color of his lips was a lavender color from excessive blood loss. She remembered what the doctor said just now. In order to save the child, Mr. Li's blood transfusion has reached the limit that the human body can bear. He is now very weak and needs careful care and recuperation. Thank you. She looked at his sleeping face and said softly. The man on the hospital bed was sleeping silently. Xiaoling thought, thanks to him this time. Fortunately he and Xiao Hui have the same rare blood type, otherwise, Xiao Hui would really die. I also feel strange, how could Xiao Hui, who obviously has type O blood, become a rare blood type? How could such a low probability event happen? Moreover, as her dead child, it was also caused by a chemical fiber allergy. Her heart was beating irregularly, and there was an answer waiting to come out. She looked at Xiao Hui's face more carefully than usual. Under the dim light, she found that the child's eyebrows were really delicate and beautiful, and he looked vaguely familiar, like her. Looking more carefully, I couldn't help but compare it to Li Lei on the hospital bed next to me. I don't know if it was an illusion, but I always felt that the outlines of the two of them were somewhat similar. Suddenly, she found a pair of scissors. First carefully cut off a strand of Xiao Hui's short hair and put it into a transparent plastic bag. Then he cut off a strand of his own hair and put it in another plastic bag. Finally, after thinking about it, he cut off a lock of Li Lei's hair. She left the ward and went to find Wei Shaiyin. Your family is the most powerful biopharmaceutical company in the world, right? She asked. Wei Shaiyin was still working on his music in the recording studio. Hearing this, he became a little impatient. Don't mention that perverted family to me. The most powerful people in the world are all perverts. Xiaoling. Wei, in fact, you are probably the best in the world at making music. No wonder others call you Wei a pervert. Complaints are complaints, and you still have to ask him for help. You have a laboratory at home, right? Can you help me test these 3 DNAs for a paternity test? She handed the 3 transparent plastic bags to Wei. Wei had a look of disgust on his face. Just for this trivial matter? Just find a hospital to deal with it. Why should you go to my old perverts? Xiaoling said, I don't trust other places. Although paternity testing can be done in almost every hospital, after experiencing Xiao Hui's blood type incident, she was really afraid of another accident and had to find someone she could trust. Wei Shaiyin was very unwilling to deal with her own family and asked very pickily, whose hair is this? Let's talk about it first. If it's a roundabout relative like your third aunt's brother-in-law who lives next door, I won't do it. I will promise you. She didn't know how troublesome it would be for him to go home. Those science geeks were his nightmare. Xiaoling whispered, me and Xiao Hui. As for the third hair strand, she chose to keep it secret. After all, if Xiao Hui was not their biological child, there would be no need to stir up trouble again. Wei Shaiyin looked at her in surprise, yours and Xiao Hui's. Isn't he your adopted child? Xiaoling, Your own child died 4 years ago. As soon as the words came out, he felt he was a little too much, so he softened his tone and said, "Sorry, I was so surprised." Xiaoling smiled bitterly, "Just think of it as my whim." Wei Shaiyin took 3 copies of the hair and promised to give her the results as soon as possible. What came out before the results was the news from the ward. The nanny who stayed with her in bed called her and told her that Li Lei had woken up. Xiaoling hurried back to see him. Pushing open the door, Li Lei was looking at Xiao Hui in the bed next door with his eyes open, not knowing what he was thinking. When he saw Xiaoling, he suppressed the strange look in his eyes and greeted with a smile, "Xiaoling." Xiaoling walked over, "Are you awake? How are you feeling?" Looking down at him, the sunlight outside the window was quiet and gently brushed on his cheek. He looked so handsome. His eyes were shining and reassuring. "I'm fine," he smiled. "My health is good. I'll recover quickly if I take some nutritional supplements." Actually, things are not as light-hearted as he said. He lost too much blood this time and his vitality was severely damaged. He needs to pay special attention to treatment for a while. Xiaoling had already heard the doctor's advice and knew that he was just comforting her. A warm current surged in her heart. She walked to the bed, took an apple, and peeled it for him bit by bit. The craftsmanship is still full of pits and pits, which makes people unbearable to look at. Li Lei looked at her for a while and said softly, "You are so beautiful." Her hand peeling the apple paused slightly, and a large piece of pulp fell off along with the skin. "You're so sick and you still want to joke," she scolded him in a low voice. Li Lei said, "I'm sorry." She raised her eyes and looked at him with some confusion. "I didn't take good care of Xiao Hui," Li Lei said. Xiaoling shook her head, "I didn't take good care of him." After a pause, she said sadly, "Maybe I am destined to be like this, and I will harm the people around me." She has decided that after this incident is over, she needs to ask her brother carefully, and if she can't keep anyone by her side, she will send Xiao Hui out. Although, she likes this child so much. However, you cannot kill your child just for your own liking. Thinking about this, her expression became even sadder. Li Lei comforted her, "The punishment of being alone and widowed. There will be a way to solve it. Look, haven't you come here without any danger for so many years? Xiaoling, you have that amulet, I will share half of your fate for you." Xiao Hui, no matter what, the lives of other people close to you are not really in danger. That's because he kowtowed and exchanged his smooth fortune for it. Xiaoling has mixed feelings in her heart. Unconsciously, I looked at Xiaowai on the hospital bed next to him. The little child was breathing slowly and was still sleeping. Yes, thanks to Li Lei, Xiaowai was able to receive a timely blood transfusion this time. Later, Pei Ziyan also came. He pushed open the door of the ward and saw Xiaoling peeling an apple for Li Lei, her eyes slightly darkened. Xiaoling also turned around and saw him. Pei Ziyan gathered his emotions and asked very gently, "Is Xiao Hui okay?" Xiaoling put the apple into Li Lei's hand and stood up. "Pei Ziyan, I want to talk to you." After saying that, she took the lead and walked out of the ward. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 702. Chapter 702, A Treasure Connected by Blood and Flesh. Pei Ziyan followed him out. The long and empty corridor was eerily quiet. Xiaoling looked at the man in front of her and was the first to break the silence. "Did you ask the doctor to conceal Xiao Hui's blood type?" Although she wasn't smart, she wasn't stupid either. Not far from 10. Pei Ziyan had expected that Xiao Hui would ask when he learned that something had happened to him. At this time, he replied unhurriedly, "Hide Xiaowai's blood type? Why am I so bored? This kind of blood type is rare, and hospitals sometimes misdiagnose it. Xiaoling, there is no need for me to hide it from you. He is not your child. Your child is gone. He found a relatively mild expression. However, Xiaoling still glared at him fiercely. You lied. Why should I lie? He frowned slightly and looked at her with the eyes of a child who couldn't understand a tantrum, just like he had done countless times in his previous life when he had lost his temper in front of her. Pretend to be very similar on the surface. In fact, he was also surprised. He did not expect that something would happen to the child so soon. As early as when he asked the doctor to lie to her that she had type O blood, he had considered the possible consequences. At that time, he had a trace of luck in his heart. How could an accident requiring a blood transfusion be so easy to happen? Many people will never receive a blood transfusion in their lifetime. Unexpectedly, Xiao Hui met him not long after. Perhaps it is destiny. Pei Xian was a little worried about the child, but it was only somewhat. If the child died, he would be sad for a while and go to the grave to burn a few pieces of paper for him, that's all. Who said he was the child of Xiaoling and another man? His origin is original sin. Pei Xian faced Xiaoling calmly. You are too tired, that's why you think wildly. Xiaoling had doubts in her heart and stared at Pei Xian closely, trying to discern any clues from his face. But he was destined to be disappointed. This man was so good at hiding his emotions that he couldn't tell anything was wrong. Finally, Xiaoling gave up. It's better not to be you, she said, I don't want to get out of hand with you. Pei Xian's expression moved slightly. How could that be? She didn't get any useful information from this conversation. Afterwards, she entrusted Lin Yunan to investigate the wrong blood type. She needed the hospital to give her an explanation. Lin Yunan hired a team of lawyers and worked diligently to negotiate with the hospital. The incident ended with the attending doctor taking the blame and resigning. But Xiaoling still felt empty and unsteady in her heart. Is it really none of Pei Xian's business? She went to see the doctor in private, but Dr. Chen just said, I was overworked those days and made a mistake. I'm really sorry. Mr. Pei? He didn't even say a few words to me. He's so nice. How could someone attack an innocent child? How could you have such an idea? Although he resigned, he still did not dare to say anything under Pei Xian's coercion and inducement. Xiaoling's journey was destined to be in vain. Since the matter has happened and so much energy has been involved, but no results can be found, she does not intend to continue to waste it. As long as Xiaowai is safe and sound, that's better than anything else. What's more, she had something bigger on her mind. On the third day, Wei Shaiyan came to see her. He handed Xiaoling to the family lounge near the ward with a solemn expression. This child is actually your biological child, Xiaoling. What's going on? Didn't your child die 4 years ago? The news came too suddenly. Xiaoling had no time to listen carefully to what he said in the second half of his sentence. Just the 3 words biological were enough to make her heart filled with joy like fireworks. Really, her voice trembled uncontrollably, and she looked at Wei Shaiyan eagerly. Is Xiaowai really my biological child? Wei Shaiyan nodded. It's absolutely true. In order to prevent the results from being wrong, I asked 2 different laboratories to do the identification, and the results from both sides are the same. This is his privilege as the young master of the Wei family. If for an ordinary person, let alone 2 laboratories doing it at the same time, just bothering the family's top researcher with a trivial matter like a paternity test would be enough for the security personnel to kick the person out. Xiaoling cried with joy, crying and laughing at the same time. Wei Shaiyan said with disdain, it's so ugly. However, she had long ago not cared about whether it looked ugly or not. She took the test report from his hand and looked at it again and again, her heart and eyes full of joy. She saw that her DNA matched Xiao Hui's, and that another man's DNA also matched Xiao Hui's. This child is indeed her biological child, the biological child of her and Li Lei. Wei Shaiyan was a little curious. Is it really your child who died 4 years ago? What happened back then that he was still alive and was adopted by you by accident? Xiaoling shook her head. She didn't know what happened back then. Putting down the test report, she thought about it and suddenly realized that she had never seen the child's body back then. All the photos and the tragic scene of the child's death were all described to her by someone sent by Pei Xian. Could it be that Pei Xian is lying? He knew that the child was not dead back then. Xiaoling's eyes suddenly widened. Then, it all made sense. 4 years ago, Pei Xian didn't want her to know that the child was still alive. Then it is very likely that after discovering that Xiaowai had a rare blood type and was allergic to chemical fibers, he chose to conceal the child's blood type and did not want her to find out the truth. She took out her phone and called Lin Yunan. As for the blood type, call a private detective and check it carefully. She must find out whether Pei Xian is so vicious. If so, she must never let him get close to Xiaowai in the future. 4 years, 4 whole years. He deceived her so much. A burst of unspeakable anger surged in her heart, and she wanted to rush to question Pei Xian immediately. However, she had to restrain this impulse because there were more important things at the moment. The top priority is to visit Xiaowai and take a good look at this child who has been reunited after a long absence. Xiaoling hurriedly walked back and pushed open the door of the ward. In the ward, Li Lei was startled by her appearance. Xiaoling. She ignored Li Lei and stood by the door, staring blankly at the little figure on the hospital bed. He looks so thin and frail. Now he is 5 years old, but he is not as strong as 4-year-old Li Rui. How much suffering has he suffered in these years? Her tears flowed down one after another. Li Lei became nervous, not caring that he was still very weak, and struggled to sit up from the bed. Xiaoling, what's wrong with you? Don't scare me. Xiaoling walked towards the child step by step, stretched out her hand tremblingly, and carefully touched the child's cheek. The sleeping child is very quiet, and the soft eyelashes cast fine shadows under the eyelids. She stroked the corners of his eyes and eyebrows little by little, and then touched his little body along his cheeks. A very real and soft touch. This is her Xiaowai, her baby who is connected by blood. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 703. Chapter 703 Recognition. At that time, she had to go through so much hardship to give birth to a child. Thank God, I am really grateful to God. I never thought that we would see each other again one day in this life. Her tears fell drop by drop, falling on the child's pale face. Li Lei was frightened, struggled, got up from the hospital bed, and hugged her tightly. Xiaoling, what's wrong with you? Tell me what happened. I'm here. No matter what happens, I'll be there. He knew he was still so weak, but he stubbornly supported her. Seeing her crying like this, his heart was about to break. Xiaoling's tears continued to fall, and she finally said in tears, Xiaowai, Xiaowai is my child, he is my biological child. Li Lei was stunned. What? Xiaoling cried and repeated, he is my biological child. He is the child 4 years ago. He is back again, he is back with me. Her words were infinitely amplified in Li Lei's heart, like thunder on a sunny day. 4 years ago, the child she had with Pei Xian was not yet dead. The news was so sudden that Li Lei didn't know whether to be happy or disappointed. Looking at the girl crying with joy in front of him, he felt that he shouldn't be so gloomy. How could he be unhappy? He should congratulate her. The return of this child is such good news for her who is unable to have children. Although, the father of this child is Pei Xian. Li Lei's voice was raw and he said softly, congratulations. Xiaoling didn't notice anything strange about him. She was immersed in the joy of regaining something. She looked greedily at the child's sleeping eyes and murmured, "This child has not grown up beside me since he was a child. He has endured so many hardships over the years. Fortunately, he is finally here. I'm back and I'm going to make it up to him." In fact, when she didn't know that the child was her biological child, she was not bad to him. I say this now just because I am too happy. Lilay felt more complicated when he looked at her with such joy. However, although he was disappointed, he still kept his spirits up. That's a good thing, isn't it? Xiaoling is happy, which is more important than anything else. If God gives him another chance, he will still choose to save the child. No, wait. Save the child? It was his Lilay blood that saved this child. Lilay suddenly realized a problem. He had a rare blood type. Where was Pei Ziyan? It can't be such a coincidence. Pei Ziyan also has a rare blood type? His breath froze. Xiaoling, who is the father of the child? Xiaoling was startled, and then she remembered that the man in front of her was the child's real father. Back then, she didn't tell him the truth because she thought the child was dead and didn't want to make him more sad. But what about now? The child is still alive. If Lilay knew that the child was his own, he would not be sad. Hence, Xiaoling raised her eyes and looked at him. Xiaowai is your biological son, not Pei Ziyan's. Lilay's heart skipped a beat. He suspected that he was hallucinating. What? Xiaoling's face showed a look that sounded like crying and smiling. Xiaowai is your biological child. Lilay then heard clearly. He originally just asked such a question out of unexplainable luck, but he didn't expect Xiaoling to give him such a big surprise. He has a son. This son is his biological son. For a moment, Lilay was so excited that he felt as if he was in a dream and couldn't believe it. Xiaowai is my son? His biological son, he said, looking at the child on the bed again and again. The little child is still asleep, his fat cheeks are a little pale, but he is still so cute. Lilay couldn't get enough of it. He looked at the child's sleeping face and blamed himself. Why didn't he notice it after being together for so long? Although Xiao Hui doesn't look particularly like him, if you look closely, you can still see a bit of his outline. The child's skin color is a little dark, and his facial features also have a little bit of mixed race characteristics. These are all his inheritance. Lilay half knelt in front of the hospital bed, holding Xiao Hui's little hand tightly. Xiao Hui, my Xiao Hui. Xiaoling looked at the father and son with a mixture of sadness and joy in her heart. Sadly, she recalled how much hardship she had endured in order to give birth to this child. She originally thought that everything she had done was in vain, and that the child she had given birth to after so much hard work would die within a matter of 100 days. It is a kind of sadness that after struggling with all your strength, you have nothing. However, now she is very happy that the lost child is finally back. All the hard work that year was worth it. Their family of 3 was finally reunited. Lilay looked at the child carefully for a long time, stood up, and gave Xiaoling a tight hug. Xiaoling, he said, you gave birth to a son for me. You actually gave birth to a son for me, why didn't you tell me? Xiaoling rested her head on his shoulder and let her tears soak his clothes. She didn't speak, and Lilay didn't need her answer, because he understood it just by thinking about it. Back then, when you were with Pei Ziyan, if he found out that you were pregnant with my son, he would definitely force you to abort the child, right? That's why you took this trick and lied that the child was his. Her tears flowed more fiercely, as if the grievances she had endured for so many years were finally understood. She cried and said, it's all your fault, it's all your fault. It was all his fault that his life or death was uncertain in the paragliding accident, so she had to return to Pei Ziyan. It's all because he didn't rescue her in time, so she had to carefully protect the child from the devil's eyes. It was all his fault that she fell in love with him like a moth to a flame. Lilei hugged her tighter. It's all my fault, it's all my fault. Xiaoling, you have been wronged. At this moment, he felt extremely guilty and self-blame. God, what did he do back then? Leaving his woman and children in such a dangerous place, living under the eyes of another man as cruel as the devil. Lilei was very scared. If this child really died, he would never forgive himself for the rest of his life. He said to Xiaoling, let me protect you from now on. He was still very weak from a serious illness, but his words were so firm, and his chest was strong and warm, and he carefully protected her. He has a son, a biological son, the son he gave birth to by the woman he loves most. Lilei's face suddenly burst into a big smile. At this moment, he felt that even his life was complete. Xiaoling leaned in his arms for a while and said, I'm sorry for hiding it from you for so long. Lilei raised her face and kissed her slowly, tenderly, and lingeringly. Some words don't need to be said, just like love, one can know each other's feelings with just one look or movement. He never blamed her. No matter what she did, how could he blame her? Lilei always thought that he had done a lot for her. However, compared with her efforts to give birth to their child in such a bad situation, he felt that everything he had done was not worth mentioning. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weiniang. Chapter 704. Chapter 704 Happy Moments. Lilei could not imagine that she had to bear so much sorrow alone for so many years. She is just a weak woman, how can she survive those long years? If she didn't know that Xiao Hui was still alive, did she plan to keep these secrets deep in her heart for the rest of her life? Lilei's heart was as sharp as a knife. On the hospital bed, little Xiaowei suddenly moved and opened his eyes. Looking at the man and woman hugging each other beside the bed, he called softly, Sister, Uncle Li. The child's weak voice brought the two of them back to reality. Lilei reluctantly let go of Xiaoling, walked to the bedside, and looked at Xiao Hui with concern. You're awake? His voice was gentler than usual, Kinder. Xiaoling was very direct. She leaned down and gave the child a long hug. She pressed her cheek against Xiaowei's small cheek, and felt the child's thin breathing and body temperature, which was so real that she couldn't let go no matter what. The little child also stretched out his fat, short hands and hugged her through her clothes. Smelling the faint fragrance on her body, the child said, Sister, if you don't cry, I'll be fine. Xiaoling then realized that she had shed tears again at some point. She always seemed to be very fragile in front of the people she loved deeply. She wiped her eyes hurriedly and scolded Xiao Hui with a choked sob, What's wrong? You almost died, you know. Why are you so careless? I've only been away for a few days and something happened. Xiao Hui said confusedly, I don't know why the elevator suddenly broke down. Lilei said from the side, I have asked people to investigate the cause of the accident, and we must let the hospital give an explanation. Xiaoling nodded. She hadn't had time to take care of these things yet, thanks to Lilei's careful thinking. On the hospital bed, little Xiaowei also said sweetly, Thank you, Uncle Li. Lilei's eyes were slightly dark, Xiao Xiaowei, you shouldn't call me Uncle Li. The child's eyelashes, like butterfly wings, fluttered twice. Xiaoling realized what Lilei was going to say and looked at him and then at Xiao Xiaowei lying on the bed. She reached out, took Lilei's hand, and slowly placed his hand on the child's small palm. The palms of three people are folded together. Xiao Xiaowei, Xiaoling said, I am not your sister, and Lilei is not your uncle. We are your father and mother. She simply told the child the results of the DNA test. Little Xiaowei puffed out his baby fat little face and said in his heart, I knew it a long time ago. This time I came out from my uncle's place just to get to know my parents. My uncle said that my mother had a special destiny, and she would have to suffer a lot before we could get to know each other. If he could help share the hardships, he could speed up the process of getting to know her. Xiaowai asked his uncle how to help his mother share the disaster. Uncle said, I will make a magic circle to turn your good luck into bad luck. You will encounter accidents and disasters, which may look dangerous, but they won't really kill you. The national preceptor, dressed in white, looked at his precocious little nephew and asked, are you willing to take this risk? At that time, little Xiaowai nodded without hesitation. For his mother, he is willing to do anything. Sure enough, my uncle was right, he suffered greatly this time. However, everything was worth it. As expected, his mother discovered his identity and recognized him. The child's face showed a look of surprise, then joy. I have parents, he grinned with a big smile. Great, sister, it turns out you are my mother. You are so beautiful, I am so happy. He looked at Li Lei again. If Uncle Li is dad, can I go play with Mao more often? This child just wants to play. Xiaoling felt sad, but she was so happy that she wanted to laugh. Over there, Li Lei repeatedly promised, no matter when you want to see Mao, you can. The child laughed happily. He turned his head, looked at Xiaoling, and called out seriously, Mom. Xiaoling's tears fell again without warning. For how many years, she had thought about it day and night, wishing she could hear her biological son call her mom. However, her child was only 100 days old when he died. He was still so young and could not speak at all. She thought that she would never be able to see this day in her life. But now, in a twists and turns, such a luxurious wish has been fulfilled. Her tears fell even harder. Little Xiaowai raised his hand and wiped away the tears on her face little by little. Mom, don't cry. She was afraid that the child would be worried, so she tried her best to hold back her tears and smiled. Her chaotic look looked very embarrassing, but there was something charming and beautiful about it. Mom didn't cry, she was happy, she said. Li Lei stepped forward and gently held her in his arms, as if to give her support and strength. Xiaowai turned to look at his father. This was the first time he looked at his biological father so carefully. He still remembered that when he lived in the mountains, he asked his uncle, what kind of person is dad? Uncle sneered, an idiot. Looking at the child's disappointed look, the indifferent Imperial Master reluctantly added, but he is also very powerful. He has built a huge industry and has many subordinates who are willing to follow him. The National Master understands very well how important a tall father figure is to a boy. It is the most natural role model for a child since he is born, and the source of initial pride and strength. Anyone, whether it is mother, uncle, no matter what, there is no substitute for classes. What's more, to a certain extent, his father, really, is. It is okay. The national preceptor thought reluctantly. The child was very happy to know the answer. He has always admired and yearned for his father. After coming down the mountain, he was even more proud when he saw such a majestic pet beside his father. This is his father, who is more powerful than others. This time he called Daddy, he was willing to do so. He called once, but it was not enough, and called a second time, Dad. Li Lei's nose felt sore and he almost cried like Xiaoling. The man didn't shed tears easily, but this situation really made him unable to control himself. He closed his eyes slightly, held back the burst of tears, and said to the child calmly, be good. He was a man, and he didn't say too many words like Xiaoling. He just hugged Xiaoling and sat beside the child's bed. He reached out and took the child into his arms. From now on, he will have a complete family. He will protect their mother and son and fulfill his responsibilities as a father. The family quietly enjoyed this rare tenderness. After a long time, Xiaoling asked Xiaowai, how have you lived these years? Who adopted you and treated you well? Xiaowei blinked, uncle and grandpa are very good to me. Uncle and grandpa? Suddenly, Xiaoling seemed to remember something and narrowed her eyes slightly, who is your uncle? End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 705. Chapter 705 Get another 10 billion. Xiao Hui was a little embarrassed, I can't say. Uncle had told him a long time ago that he could not reveal all of his identity and could only let his mother discover it bit by bit. Xiaoling gritted her teeth. No matter how stupid she was, she realized something was wrong. How could it be such a coincidence? Her biological child happened to appear in her neighborhood after being separated for many years. And let her happen to find him while walking and pick him up and take him home. If the person who abandoned him was his uncle. At this time, Li Lei also reacted, Xiaomoyan? Did the imperial master deliberately return the child? The two adults turned their heads together and looked at Xiao Shaowai on the hospital bed. The little Shaowai stretched out his fat and short hands to cover his eyes, twisted his body, and said with a face that was trying to conceal himself, Don't ask me, I don't know anything, I don't know anything. His appearance confirmed the two adults' speculations. Xiaoling stood up and was about to walk out when Li Lei held her back, Where are you going? Xiaoling gritted her teeth and said, Find someone to settle the score. She left the ward and dialed a phone number. In the deep mountains shrouded in clouds and mist, the leaves rustle. In a quaint courtyard, a gray-haired old man wearing a white robe, holding a white chess piece in one hand, was playing chess with a young man sitting opposite. The young man was holding black, with a face as indifferent as water, but looking at the chess game, he was strategizing and had already forced the old man into a blind corner and killed him. Father, don't you give up yet, the young man's voice was calm, the victory or defeat has been decided. The old man raised his long eyebrows, with a sullen look on his face, You brat, now that your wings are strong, you dare to point fingers at your father. He slammed the white piece on the chessboard, Who said I can't win? The young man looked calmly dropped a piece with one hand, and then ate up a large area of the white piece. The old man was so angry that he blew his beard and stared, How could he teach such a rebellious son? It's just a game of chess, and I don't even know how to give in. It's really, raising a son is so boring. It's better to raise a daughter. I heard that my daughter was innocent and soft-hearted. I don't know what is going on now. The old man's mind was a little dazed. Opposite him, the young man stretched out two long, white, and bony fingers, gently stroking the soft fur of a silver-white fox lying beside the glazed chessboard, and said in a calm tone, Father, it's your turn. The old man scratched his head anxiously, looking at the defeated chess game. What should he do? At this moment, the young man's cell phone rang. It is a very pleasant piece of music, the one Butterflies Can't Fly Across the Sea sung by Xiaoling many years ago. Answer the phone quickly, the old man said with great joy. He pushed the chessboard, and the black and white chess pieces were swept away into chaos. No more, no more. The corners of the young man's mouth twitched a little. This is really his father. Every time he is about to lose, he always tries to play rogue. I don't know what people from the outside would think if they saw the former imperial master they admired so much behaved like this. He said, Father, if you lose, you lose. Who said I lost? The old man glared, I won't stop you from doing your business. Little bastard, is this your sister calling? In the past few years, you have concealed Xiao Shaowai's identity and deceived her so hard. She must have come to settle a score with you, the old man said, gloating about the misfortune. Fortunately, he passed on all his unique skills to his son early. Now he doesn't have to deal with the troubles of Phoenix himself. It's too wasteful. Heartbroken. Xiaomoyan was speechless. This father spoke as if he was not an accomplice. He answered the phone calmly, Hello, Xiaoling. Xiaoling's voice came from the other end of the phone, Xiaomoyan, you bastard. She was really angry, and she didn't even call her brother, Shea, why did you raise him? You already knew he was my son, right? Xiaomoyan looked unmoved. Yeah. What do you mean? Xiaoling was angry. Xiaomoyan, explain it to me clearly. On the mountain platform, a gentle breeze blows. The young man's voice was still calm and had a strange soothing power. It's a long story. I'll go find you in a while. By the way, please remember to keep the child's identity secret for the time being. Don't let it be revealed to you and Li people other than Reino. You are indeed a big bastard, Xiaoling yelled. Xiaomoyan calmly hung up the phone. He raised his eyes and said to the old man who was watching the show, I will go to S City in a few days to meet Xiaoling. The old man waved his hands hurriedly. Go, go, Xiao Hui and I feel much more comfortable playing chess. Xiao Hui is the fox lying lazily beside the glazed chessboard. He has silver-white fur and is a bit confused and evil. Xiaomoyan. By the way, the old man asked him, is Xiaoling's pocket money enough? When you go down the mountain this time, bring her another 10 billion. The girl's family needs to be rich, but she is really too poor. In this world, probably only families like the Xia family think that giving their daughter hundreds of millions every now and then is considered too poor. Xiaomoyan nodded. He also felt that Xiaoling was too poor. Looking at his father lightly, he said, I have calculated that with Xiaoling's current fate, the family can afford her 13.528 billion this time, which is affordable. It's up to you. The old man didn't pay much attention to these details. The wealth accumulated by the Xia family over many generations amounts to tens of billions or even a drop in the bucket. Normally, neither father nor son has much to do with the money. This huge wealth can only be used to raise their daughter. The old man was very melancholy. How great would it be if Xiaoling could return to the family as soon as possible? I hope Xiaomoyan's trip goes well and can speed up Xiaoling's return. Over there, City S. Xiao Hui's condition improved day by day. Li Lei contacted experts and formulated a plan to treat Xiao Hui's allergens. Although chemical fiber allergy is scary, fortunately it is not a terminal disease. As long as you are careful, take injections and medicines on time, you will be completely cured one day. Shea Y was very cooperative with the treatment. After the first stage of treatment, he was discharged from the hospital. Li Lei came to handle the discharge procedures for him and accompanied the mother and son to pack their things. In the middle of cleaning up, he said to Xiaoling, Xiaoling, please move to my place so that I can take care of you. This is not the first time he has made this invitation. Xiaoling rejected it before, but now it is different. They have a biological child who is connected by blood and needs a warm home. Xiao Hui also raised his head when he heard this, looking at them with bright eyes. Xiaoling paused slightly while packing her things. Let's talk about it again. My brother told me that Xiao Hui's life experience cannot be announced to the public right now. When the situation gets better in the future, we will see what to do next. She knew she had a bad fate, and her brother wouldn't let her announce it because he was afraid of being punished, so she was extra careful. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weiniang. Chapter 706. Chapter 706 Return to Nanshan. Li Lei was very disappointed. However, he understood her difficulty, so he did not force it. Then I will come to see you often. Xiaoling nodded and added, you still have to be careful about the paparazzi. Her status as a queen is a bit troublesome. There are paparazzi ambushing her from time to time in several places she frequents. If she has too much contact with Li Lei, there is no guarantee that she will not be photographed. Arrived, causing criticism. Li Lei chuckled, when Shea Y's identity is announced, no one will say that you are a mistress. Xiaoling said, it cannot be announced until brother has spoken. She told Lilei what Xia Moyan said on the phone, and added, brother will come to see us in a few days, and we can talk in detail after we meet specific situation. An indifferent man in white clothes appeared in Lilei's mind. He once met Xia Moyan twice. The first time was when he was seeking an amulet for Xiaoling, and the second time was when Xiaoling was pregnant and wanted to escape from being imprisoned by Pei Xian. During those 2 times, Lilei didn't know that the master of the state who had never seen the dragon was his brother-in-law. Now, when he heard that such a powerful brother-in-law was coming, he was a little nervous. He asked Xiaoling, what does your brother like? It's a rare visit, so you should treat him well. Xiaoling was very unhappy. He has lied to me for so many years, what's the point of treating him? Classmate Li Xiaoli was melancholy. She and Xia Moyan were close relatives, a family whose blood was thicker than water. It wouldn't hurt to show a little temper. However, this was his first official meeting with his brother-in-law, so he couldn't neglect him. The little Shaowai raised his head and listened to them. He probably saw his father's difficulties and rushed to answer, uncle doesn't have any special hobbies, but he likes natural and original things. If he can make a pot of good tea, I'll be in a better mood. Xia Moyan was indifferent by nature, and if Xiao Hui hadn't been observant, he wouldn't have noticed this. Lilei's eyes lit up and he touched the child's little head. Okay, let's do it like this. Xiaoling glared at the child lightly, not really angry. The matter is settled like this. There were still several days before Xia Moyan's arrival. Lilei had just met his biological son. His heart and eyes were full of joy. He discussed with Xiaoling about taking the child out to play. Xiaoling was reluctant to let Xiao Hui leave her side. Lilei said, Xiaoling, come with us. Our family of 3 has never had an outing together. Xiaoling hesitated, what should I do if I encounter the paparazzi? Lilei smiled, showing his white teeth, go to the Nanshan Horse Racing Club. It is a membership-only club. Journalists are not allowed to enter, and there is no general public. Those who can enter are either rich or noble, so they will not disturb us. On the side, little Shaowai also looked at her expectantly, Mom, let's go together. This call of mother made Xiaoling's heart melt. She finally nodded and said, okay. The next day, it was a sunny day, and a family of 3 came to the Nanshan Racing Club. It was already autumn, and the branches and leaves were swaying in the woods. Xiaoling looked at the greenery and the gurgling water, and recalled that when she met Li Leichu many years ago, she followed him to this club and rode horses together. At that time, she never imagined that the 2 of them would have such a deep bond. Now when I revisit my old place, I am filled with emotions. Xiao Shaowai held their hands and looked around with curiosity on his face. He asked Lilei in a sweet voice, Dad, I heard that you have a horse in this club. Can you take me to see it? He has loved animals since he was a child and has never seen a real horse. Am looking forward to. Lilei said, of course. He also knows that Xiao Shaowai likes animals, so he specially brought him here to ride horses today. They soon arrived at the famous horse fostering area. The scenery here was more beautiful than other places. Lilei held Xiao Hui's hand with one hand, put the other hand to his lips and whistled. After a while, they saw a field of black horses. He trotted all the way with elegant steps, his long mane flying in the wind, and under the sun, it looked like shiny black satin. Wow, it's so beautiful, the little child exclaimed. The horse stopped in front of the child. Lilei picked up Xiao Shaowai, took the child's little hand and touched the bridge of the horse's nose, and said, his name is Xiaolei. He is a purebred Hanoverian horse with a good temper. Little Shaowai smiled and greeted it, hello, my name is Shaowai, you are so beautiful. The vigorous Hanoverian horse looked at the child quietly and neighed softly. Lilei said, it likes you. So, the child laughed innocently again. Lilei put the little child on the horse. The horse had a very stable character and did not struggle randomly because there was a strange child on its back. Instead, it adjusted its stance to make the child sit more comfortably. Xiaoling on the side looked at it in amazement. This horse is really understanding of human nature. Li Lei smiled. That horse of yours was also very smart back then if he remembered correctly. Looking back now, the first person to recognize that Xiaoling was the reincarnation was probably the one who showed his affection to her at the Nanshan Club. Sing. When mentioning the horse, Xiaoling's eyes showed a bit of nostalgia. She called the staff not far away and asked, "How is Kinga doing now? Is she still there?" The staff member said, "We don't have a horse named Kinga here." Xiaoling said, "How is that possible? It is a cross between a sweat horse and a British thoroughbred horse. It is red, female, and has a very fierce temper." The staff suddenly realized, "You mean, the horse that the former Queen Xiaoling fostered here? That horse was taken away by the Emperor's Mr. Pei a few years ago and is no longer with us." Xiaoling's expression showed a bit of disappointment. She thanked the staff, lowered her head, and walked forward in the footsteps of Li Lei and the Hanoverian horse. Seeing that she was not happy, Li Lei said, "I'll go find Pei Xian another day and ask him to return the horse to you." Xiaoling shook her head, "He won't listen to you, so I'll go ahead." Li Lei did not want her to have contact with Pei Xian and said, "Believe me, let me figure this out." Xiaoling glanced sideways at him, knowing what he was thinking, and said with some waning interest, "Let's talk about it later. After all, the reason why she can walk side by side with Li Lei calmly now is because of her child. If she didn't have children, she wouldn't have made any plans to reunite with him, and she didn't want him to interfere too much." Li Lei understood what she meant and didn't speak again. Now, he carefully protects this relationship, which is too fragile and scarred to withstand any setbacks. He held the Hanoverian horse's reins and walked forward step by step. Xiaowei sat on the horse, looking at the scenery and listening to his parents chatting. Hearing this, he couldn't help but change the subject. "Dad, Mom, I also want to learn to ride a horse." End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 707. Chapter 707. Who does the child look like? Xiaoling smiled and said, "Aren't you just riding a horse now?" Xiao Hui raised his head, "I'm just sitting on the horse now, and my father is holding my hand. I want to learn to ride a horse by myself." He raised his little hand and pointed at a rider who was speeding by not far away. "Like that, so handsome." Xiaoling said, "You are still young and cannot ride such a big horse." The child was a little downcast. Li Lei looked at the child, summoned a staff member from the race course, and asked him if there was a pony suitable for the child to ride. The staff kept saying, "Yes, yes. Mr. Li, it's a coincidence that you came here. We just tamed a few ponies here some time ago, and they are just about ready to be ridden." Li Lei said, "Take us to see it." Led by the staff, they came to the place where the foals were raised. Xiaowei was supported by his parents and got off the tall Hanoverian horse. He looked at the ponies in the stable with some curiosity. The ponies are all beautiful. Their fur is shiny and smooth, their eyes are reserved, and their forehooves are long and powerful. When Xiao Hui looked at them, they also looked at Xiao Hui curiously. This child had a natural affinity that made all the animals like him. The staff introduced them. "This horse is a purebred horse, the one over there is an Arabian horse, and the other one is a hybrid of an Arabian horse and a Mongolian horse." Li Lei lowered his head and asked Xiao Hui, "Which one do you like?" Xiao Hui's eyes moved back and forth among the ponies, unable to make a decision. Xiaoling said to the staff, "This is the first time this child is learning to ride a horse. I want a docile horse." The staff member smiled and said, "Miss Ye, don't worry. These horses have good temperaments and are specially trained for children to ride." They won't run wild, but she was a little strange in her heart. Why did Monsieur bring them with her? My son is with Mr. Li? It looked like a family having an outing. He couldn't help but take another look at the three people in front of him, the fire of gossip burning in his heart. It's a pity that those who work in such a high-end club have undergone strict training. No matter how gossipy they cannot leak guest information. They are destined to keep all the gossip in their stomachs without anyone to share it. The staff is sad, really. He cheered up and continued to introduce the pony to them. No matter which one the young master likes, you can ride it. You can also buy it as your own horse. We will provide it with a special stable. Hearing what he said, Lilei asked the child, if you like it, tell me, and buy it for you. Is it really possible? The child was very happy. Lilei nodded with a smile. A horse is worth a lot of money, especially if it is a famous breed, and the money is burned as paper. The staff was surprised again. With Mr. Li's status, although buying such a horse is not a big deal, the problem is that he bought it as a gift to someone else's child. Someone else's. Send such an expensive gift. He secretly glanced at Monsieur next to him, and saw that Monsieur had no intention of refusing. Could it be that the rumors are true? The two of them have actually been together secretly for a long time. The staff was in tears over lasagna. I really want to gossip, woo woo woo. Over there, Xiaowai said happily, that's great, I'm going to have my own pony soon. The child's little body walked back and forth among several horses, trying to choose the one he liked best, but they were all so beautiful that it was difficult to choose. At this moment, he suddenly saw a pony standing alone in the corner of the stable. The pony's fur was dull and it looked very weak. It seemed that it couldn't even stand upright. Seeing someone looking at it, it took a timid step back and flicked its tail uneasily. Xiao Hui walked over and looked at it for a while. What's wrong with it? He turned to ask the staff, is it sick? The staff sighed, there was an accident during the breeding. This pony is the child of a purebred horse and a crossbred horse. It has a weak immune system when it is born. If it gets sick, the cost of treatment is very high, and it is not, what a good breed, it will be euthanized in a few days. Xiao Hui's little face was covered with a shadow. He looked at the pony with sympathy, and after a moment, he stretched out his little hand and touched the bridge of the pony's nose, and said softly, you want to live, right? He turned around and looked at the adults, I want this one. The staff was surprised, young master, don't you think about it anymore? It's just a sick, bad stallion. The staff still can't understand. You need to know that everyone who can foster horses at the Nanshan Club is either rich or noble. Who doesn't want famous breeds and want their own horses to be better than other people's horses? Only this kid is so unique. The staff thought for a moment that if this child really bought this horse and fostered it, then in the future, a large group of gorgeous and shiny famous horses would suddenly appear in the horse racing group in the VIP area of Nanshan Club. An ugly little monster. Thinking about it, I really stand out from the crowd, I'm drunk. The corner of the staff member's mouth twitched a little, and he looked at Lilei with a questioning look. The implication was that the child is misbehaving. Are you going to accompany him to misbehave? If you raise such an inferior horse, those who know that the child chose it by himself, and those who don't know think that you are giving it as a gift and are reluctant to spend money. What is being lost is your person. However, Lilei just smiled and looked at the child gently, do you really want it? Let's have it, the child was determined. Okay, Lilei turned to the staff and said, we will buy this horse, prepare the best stable for it, and a treatment plan. The price will be charged to my account. Staff member. Well, he doesn't understand the world of rich people. The little child was very happy to buy a horse. He touched the skinny body of the pony affectionately and said, from now on, you will be my little friend. The pony was a little evasive at first, but soon calmed down under the child's comfort. Xiaoling looked at the child and pony and couldn't laugh or cry. She thought that in order to raise a perfect and outstanding famous stallion, she traveled all over the world to compare bloodlines and consult experts for breeding. I took a special plane to take Kinga back. But what about this son of mine? I want an inferior horse that is sick and about to die. Is it really my own? She glanced at Lilei and remembered that the child's father also had the habit of picking up helpless pets at home, and she felt a little complicated. The child's father at least picked up a leopard back then. Lilei seemed to see through her thoughts and chuckled, "This child looks like you. It was you who picked up the fur dumpling. That little stray cat was not a rare breed." Xiaoling. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 708. Chapter 708, Random Horses. Grinding her teeth, she resisted the urge to beat the child's father. After the staff completed the formalities, he accompanied the child to move the sick pony to the stable. The new stables are spacious and bright, and the air is filled with the fragrance of hay. The pony seemed to like this place very much, and seemed unable to believe that such a beautiful stable was prepared for it. It walked around a few times before choosing a comfortable position to stay. Xiao Hui stayed with it, stroking its withered fur. Xiaoling frowned slightly, always feeling that such a weak pony could die anytime, anywhere. If it really died, the child would be so sad. She told the staff, "Find a doctor to take a look at it." Since someone paid, the staff didn't say anything like the treatment is too expensive and immediately invited the best veterinarian in the club to diagnose and treat the pony. The veterinarian looked at the pony carefully, gave it an injection, and said to several people, "It needs to recuperate. You can't ride it in the near future, but you can take it out for a walk." Xiao Hui nodded his head sensibly. Xiaoling said, "Let's go, it's time for us to have lunch." Xiaowei waved to Xioma, "Goodbye, I'll see you again in the afternoon." He said goodbye reluctantly. The family of three walked slowly along the way they came, towards the area where VIPs stay in the club. Along the way, the leaves are growing, and the unique coolness of early autumn is refreshing and makes people feel better. The little child was babbling and singing songs in a nonsensical tune. Lilei was also very happy and hummed along with the child. Xiaoling's whole body was feeling bad. These two fathers and sons were indeed two fathers and sons. The degree of the magic sound penetrating the brain was almost the same. She couldn't help but think that if Wei Shaiyin, the obsessive-compulsive disorder, heard this, he would definitely arrest them all. The recording studio has been correcting for 10,000 years, and they won't stop until every note falls on the score. "Mom, sing with us." Xiao Hui was not satisfied yet, so he took Xiaoling's hand. Xiaoling was a little arrogant. "No, your singing is too ugly." Lilei said proudly, "The child looks like me." Although Xiao Shaowei looks more like Xiaoling in appearance, his personality and talent are more like Lilei. This makes him very proud, and he loves his son very much. Xiaoling was speechless. She inherited his absurd tone. Is it worth being so proud of? It smells shameless. She scolded him with a smile. Lilei didn't feel dissatisfied. "It would be nice to be like me. When you grow up, you will have good character and handsomeness." The corners of Xiaoling's lips raised slightly. Yes, he is the warm sunshine, and their child will also be a little Sunday. Her world becomes brighter because of them. Lilei peeked at her smile, approached her cautiously, and gently held her hand. Xiaoling's originally light mood suddenly stiffened slightly, as if she wasn't used to it, and she struggled a bit. Lilei didn't let go, so she let him hold her stiffly. "Xiaoling," Lilei said, "I love you." She didn't expect that he would say such words in front of the child. Her face felt slightly hot, and she turned her head away in embarrassment. The child seemed oblivious, still jumping up and down and singing tuneless songs. Green mountains and green waters. The staff member who just handled the pony fostering procedures for them looked at them from a distance through a small forest. Seeing them like this, he shook his head and said to himself, "They really look like a family." A few people strolled back to their residence and had a sumptuous lunch. After dinner, Xiaoling went back to her room to take a nap, and Li Lei sat by the bed to accompany her. Little Xiaowai is very lively and active. He can't sit still, so he leaves his parents and goes out to play alone. He was thinking about the pony, so he ran back to the stable to take a look, and found that its condition was much better. Maybe it was because of the injection. His dull eyes were slightly brighter. When he saw the child coming, he lowered his head and licked the child's hand very affectionately. Horses understand human nature, even the poorest horses, and they know who is kind to them. Seeing that it was energetic, Xiaowai was also very happy and said, "How about I take you out to play?" After saying that, he stretched out his fat and short hands, stood up on tiptoes to untie the reins from the stake, and pulled the pony away. He was led out. The afternoon sun was shining brightly, and the child and the pony were walking along the green grass beside the woods. The child talked to Pony while walking, "Pony, Pony, I am very happy today, you know? Seeing Mom and Dad so happy together, I really hope it can continue like this." He rambled on for a long time, and Xiao Ma tilted his head slightly, confused. The child was jumping on the grass. Suddenly, a group of ponies rushed out of the woods not far away. There were some young children on the horseback. They were noisy and headed in the direction of Xiaohui. "Yeah, there's someone," a child exclaimed. He saw Xiaohui and his pony walking on the roadside. He hurriedly pulled the reins of his horse and tried to stop suddenly. They were moving very fast. At that moment, the whole group of horses was frightened and became confused. An out-of-control pony rushed straight towards Xiaohui. The boy on the horse turned pale with fright and shouted, "Get away!" There was a chorus of exclamations. Xiaohui turned his head at this time and saw a chaotic group of horses. Seeing that the out-of-control horse was about to rush towards him, although the opponent was also a small horse, the momentum of the galloping was no joke. If he was really hit, he would be killed or disabled. At the critical moment, Xiao Hui's pony gave him a hard push and pushed him back a few steps. Xiao Hui stumbled and fell to the ground. He looked up and saw that the opponent's horse used its strong momentum to knock his weak pony to the ground. "Little horse," Xiao Hui panicked and shouted. He stood up from the grass, not caring about the mud all over his body, and subconsciously ran in the direction of the pony. Suddenly, a strong force pulled the back of his clothes. Xiao Hui stepped on his short legs, struggled a few times, turned around and glared at the person holding him back. "I want to see my pony." The person who pulled him was a big child, who sneered, looking for death. "Didn't you see the mess over there?" During the conversation, another frightened horse rushed towards them. The older boy had quick eyes and quick hands. He pulled Xiao Hui and moved a few steps, barely avoiding the horse. The children on the horses were crying and many children fell off their horses. The scene was a mess. The older child casually threw Xiaowai to a safe place under the tree and went to save other children. Xiao Hui didn't want to stay in a safe zone at all. He rushed into the field again without thinking to save his pony. The pony was hit by a crazy horse to protect him. How could he leave it to die among the wild horses? In such a chaotic situation, if any horse steps on it and bumps into it, it will run out of air. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weiniang. Chapter 709. Chapter 709 I Can Give You Money. He evaded the frightened horses with great danger and came to the pony. The pony was injured and fell to the ground. It looked at its little master with wet eyes and neighed a few times. It is telling the little master to leave quickly. It is so dangerous here and his life will be in danger if he stays for a second longer. However, Xiao Hui did not leave. He tried to drag the pony's body, but he was weak and could not move the pony at all. Xiao Hui was so anxious that he almost cried. What should he do? He didn't want the pony to die. His small body stood in front of the pony, waving his little arms to drive the horses rushing towards the pony on the ground. The child's dancing looks awkward and ridiculous. However, when Xiao Ma looked at the child's figure, tears welled up in his eyes. Finally, the panicked horses calmed down. The grass was in a mess, with several injured children and horses whose lives were unknown lying in a mess. Some of the remaining horses were frightened and ran away, while others stayed where they were, standing quietly beside their owners. Xiaowai felt relieved then, knelt down next to Xioma, and said with a cry, Xioma, Xioma, you must hold on, I will find a doctor to save you right away. He didn't have a cell phone. He looked around and saw the older kid who had just led him to safety talking on the phone. He ran over and said to the older child, Brother, can you lend me your phone? I need it urgently. When the eldest child saw him, he said angrily, everyone here has something urgent. Just after saying this to him, the cell phone rang. The eldest child picked up the phone and said, yes, in Qingyuan Mountain. There were a total of 7 children near the creek, including me, and most of them were injured. We also called the veterinarian, and the horses were also seriously injured. The eldest child seemed to be used to giving orders, and there was a certain indignity in his tone. Of determination. Xiaowai felt a little relieved. The big brother had already called the veterinarian. He watched helplessly as his elder brother continued to call. Lele fell off the horse and seemed to have broken bones and couldn't get up. Feiyu was unconscious, Xiao Murong was vomiting blood, Akiang and Lanwei were covered in blood, and they didn't know their injuries. Where are you? The elder brother spoke quickly. The person on the other side of the phone seemed to have given him some feedback. He glanced at Xiao Xiaowai beside him and then said to the phone, yes, he is just a little idiot. It was blocking the road and we didn't see it when we rushed out of the woods. The horses were frightened and that's why they were injured like this. Said a few more words and hung up the phone. He lowered his head and looked at the little idiot next to him who still had tears on his face. You, take off your clothes and go and hold the wound of the child over there. He can't stop bleeding. Xiao Hui raised his face and said, please lend me the phone first. The older child is very irritable. What time has it been? This little idiot is still bargaining with him. Do you know that human life is at stake? Hurry up and hold the wound, he said fiercely to Xiaowai. Xiao Hui bit his lip, said nothing, ran back to Xiao Ma, but took off his shirt to hold Xiao Ma's wound. The older children were stunned. This little idiot, is really a little idiot. How much is his cheap horse worth? More important than human life. If something happened to those children lying on the ground, this little idiot wouldn't be able to afford the compensation even if he lost his entire family. Xioma, you must hold on, Xiao Hui murmured. It wasn't that he was cruel and could just watch something happen to the bleeding child, but based on his experience living in the mountains with his uncle, the child was not in danger, and he could just hold the blood down by himself. But what about the pony? If he doesn't care, no one will. He ignored the angry and contemptuous looks cast by the older children and worked hard to take care of the pony. The medical team arrived quickly to rescue the children. All the children who can run horses in this club are rich or noble, and it would be a big deal if they bump into them, let alone such a big accident this time. The veterinarian and the children's parents also came quickly. One parent roared, what the is going on? I heard that a little blocked the road and frightened the horses. Where is that little bastard? Several children who were not seriously injured all looked at Xiao Hui. The roaring parent was stunned when he found that the child's face was covered in mud and his face was very dirty. He couldn't help but ask the person accompanying him, "Whose child is this?" The entourage shook their heads. "Mr. Zhou, this child is not with the young master of the Du family. We have never seen him before this time." Some young masters and ladies headed by the Du family gathered together and made an appointment to go out for a sightseeing trip. Because the children were young, many adults in the family also came over. But the child in front of him was obviously not from their circle. Everyone was murmuring in their hearts, "Where did this child come from?" With all kinds of eyes, Xiao Hui had no time to pay attention to them. He ran to the veterinarian and pulled the veterinarian's clothes. "Uncle, come and take a look at my pony. It seems to be dying." As he spoke, he shed tears. The veterinarian followed the child and saw that the pony lying on the ground turned out to be an inferior horse of mixed blood. It was particularly eye-catching among a group of injured purebred horses. That Mr. Zhou sneered. He was still a little apprehensive at first, fearing what the strange child might have, but now he was relieved. This child could only ride such a low-quality horse. How could he come from a good family? They were probably just a third-rate family who had tried their best to scrape together some money and just come to the Nanshan Club to play occasionally. He strode forward, pulled the veterinarian away, and scolded, "So many purebred horses are injured and you don't treat them. What are you wasting here with an inferior horse? What if the purebred horse doesn't receive timely treatment? What went wrong and you can afford to pay for it?" Veterinarian Yilin, this is indeed the case. There are several veterinarians at the Nanshan Club. The one in front of me is not the one who treated the pony in the morning. I don't know if it is the horse Li Lei bought for his child. Like Mr. Zhou, he also subconsciously thought that the child in front of him was very poor and did not come from a rich and powerful family, so he should not take it too seriously. He apologized to the child, "I'll go see other horses first, you just wait. Turn around and leave." Xiao Hui was so angry that tears fell down, so he just wanted to ask the older child to borrow his mobile phone to make a call. He knew that in such a chaotic situation, the veterinarian might not treat his pony first. He was already very concerned. When all the adults and children were busy treating people, he was the only one who immediately caught the veterinarian and asked the veterinarian to look at his pony's injuries. Unexpectedly, he was still being obstructed. He raised his little face and begged, "My horse is the most seriously injured. Let's look at it first. I can give you money, a lot of money." End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weiniang. Chapter 710. Chapter 710, Moving Reinforcements. The corner of the veterinarian's mouth twitched. A lot of money? He seriously doubted whether the child knew what a lot of money was. Seeing how inferior the pony was, he probably didn't have much money. Even if he scraped together a little bit, it would be nothing but a laughing stock. The veterinarian was too lazy to earn a small amount of money from the child, and he didn't want to offend Mr. Zhou, so he turned to treat other horses' injuries. Xiao Hui was angry and anxious, but Mr. Zhou was still gloating about his misfortune. "You little bastard, you caused my son to be injured, and you still have the nerve to worry about what kind of horse? Go and apologize to my son quickly, or I'll have someone beat your mongrel horse to death." Xiao Hui suddenly raised his head and looked at him silently, as if he wanted to remember his appearance in his heart. Mr. Zhou felt chilled by the child's eyes. What's going on? This child seems to be scarier than many adults when he is angry. Illusion, it must be an illusion. His dignified general manager Jota has been in the shopping mall for more than 20 years. What kind of storms and waves has he not seen? How could you be frightened by a child's glare? Mr. Zhou tried his best to ignore the uncomfortable feeling in his heart and scolded the child sternly, "What are you looking at? Be careful, I will dig out your eyeballs. On the side, Mr. Joe's secretary was very amused. This little brat is ignorant, so why do you need to condescend to him and give him ordinary knowledge? When I find out who his parents are, let his parents come to your young master, kneel down and kowtow to apologize, which can be regarded as a relief for the young master. Mr. Joe thought about it and thought it was a good idea, and nodded with satisfaction. The entourage around him was flattering Mr. Joe and ridiculing Xiao Hui. Now that things have happened, Xiao Hui has calmed down. He looked around and saw the older child who had just called for help, so he ran towards the older child with his short legs. He knows young Master Du Zheng. Mr. Joe's secretary was very surprised. Several adults looked at each other and felt that the situation was a bit bad. If this child really had any kinship with the young master of the Du family, they would probably not get any good results from ridiculing him just now. Let's go, follow up and have a look, Mr. Joe said. Anyway, his son was not seriously injured and had been bandaged properly by the ambulance staff. He had plenty of time to deal with Xiao Hui's problem. A group of people followed. Xiao Hui stopped in front of Du Zheng and said, "Lend me your phone." Du Zheng was telling an adult what happened. When he lowered his head and saw this child again, he was a little impatient. "Why is it you, little idiot, again? Let's play." The adults who followed were relieved. It seemed that the child just wanted to be related to young Master Du Zheng. Mr. Joe laughed, "You little bastard, you must recognize your duty as a human being. Don't always think about climbing high branches when you look poor." Ha ha, ha ha, ha ha ha. Several other people also laughed in agreement. Xiao Hui ignored them and said to Du Zheng word by word, "Lend me the phone, I owe you a favor. If you don't lend me the phone, my pony will die after delaying treatment, and all of you here will have no good results." He rarely threatens people. No, it should be said that this is the first time in his life, but he naturally exudes an unquestionable aura, calm, firm, equal to kindness and power, and has a faint thunderous demeanor. Du Zheng was surprised. Whose child is this? Raised like this? He grew up in a wealthy circle and considered himself to be one of the best among wealthy children, but at Xiao Hui's age, he did not have such power. This child is not simple. Although Du Zheng is young, he is not as superficial as Premier Zhou, who only knows how to judge people by their appearance. He immediately took out his mobile phone and threw it to the child. "Little idiot, remember, you owe me 2 favors. The one who borrowed the mobile phone is 1, and the one who carried the little idiot to a safe area in the crowd of random horses is also 1. The Du family has always been famous for producing capitalist vampires, and the resources that can be put to good use should be put to good use." Xiao Hui didn't mind his little calculation. He took the phone and dialed Li Lei's number directly. "Uncle Li, come quickly," the child said urgently. "My pony was hit by another horse and fell to the ground and was about to die. Please bring a veterinarian over quickly and save my pony." He knew, instead of calling that idiot mother at this time, it would be more reliable to call Dad directly. In front of outsiders, he didn't call Li Lei Dad, but called him Uncle as before. The surname Li is rare, and no one thought of Li Lei for a while. "Uncle Li?" "What Uncle Li?" Mr. Joe asked the secretary with a frown. The secretary shook his head. There were no wealthy people named Li among the wealthy families in the city. Once this was eliminated, the adults were more assured that he was indeed a child from a poor family. "Young Master Du," Mr. Joe said flatteringly, "you think so highly of this little that you even lent him your phone. What should a low-class person like him do if he has germs on his body? Be careful of getting it dirty. Your cell phone. Well, I'll give you a cell phone tomorrow, and I'll make sure it's no worse than the one you're using now." Although this Du Zheng is not very old, he is the most outstanding boy among the next generation of the Du family, the city's top wealthy family. He is doted on by his father Du Yunhong and protected by his uncle Du Yunfan. he is a proud son of heaven and attracts the admiration of countless people. Hearing this, Du Zheng was non-committal, but instead looked at the little bastard that Mr. Zhou called. His ears are very good, and he is the closest to Xiaowai. He has already heard clearly that what the child called was not Li at all, but the word Li. This surname is indeed rare. Unfortunately, there is a family that has close ties with the Du family, and it is even more prestigious than the Du family. If he has any relationship with the Li family, the favor is worth it. Over there, Mr. Zhou was still trying to die. You little bastard, do you think I can't cure you if you move the adults out of your house? Let me tell you, even if the emperor came today, he would still have to kowtow to my son. How did my son suffer? You have to take back the injury tenfold. Who wants me to kowtow? Suddenly, a lazy voice came from the side. Mr. Zhou was scolding him vigorously, and his spit was flying. I asked you to kowtow to my son. Why, you are not convinced. As he spoke, he turned around. Suddenly, his throat seemed to be stuck. As if, the cursing voice suddenly stopped. Under the sun, a handsome man stood against the wind. A sharp knife mark on his cheek gave him a cruel taste when he smiled. Bitch. This title is quite new. Li, young Master Li, everyone was shocked. Oh my God, did they read that right? How come the good-natured Li Lei appeared here? What did he just say? This title is quite new. Could it be that he is the sturdy child's uncle? End of this chapter.